If there's not any suggested changes, do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
A motion to approve the minutes.
Okay, who was that?
Jared Edwards.
Okay, all right, Jared, thank you. Do we have a second?
Chris Harris was second.
All right, Chris, thank you. Let's see, it looks like Donna, did you join us back in?
Yes, I got back in. Thank you.
All right. Just so you know, it wasn't anything personal. Everybody got booted off and we're starting back
Okay.
over. All right. So the minutes have been, there's been a motion to approve the minutes and a second. All in favor, say aye, please.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Then the minutes are approved. All right. Maybe I should ask a question from a practical standpoint. Do we need a roll call vote since this is online, or can we do it like we just did? I don't know the protocol. Anybody know?
I think with online, you have to do a roll call vote.
Okay.
I think that's right too.
Okay, I wondered about that. So Heather, I'm going to let you call the roll every time, if you would.
All right, let's see if I can remember who's here. Donna Pittman. We lose Donna?
No, I think
Thanks.
she. Are you muted, Donna?
Yes.
Okay. Jared Fears,
Yes.
Jared Edwards.
Yep.
Chris Harris,
Yes.
Josh Mayfield.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, everybody, for doing that twice. I just didn't know the protocol on a public deal like this. So, all right. Well, next up is on the agenda is update from the fire department. Is that you, Chief Short, or is that someone? Is that Mark, or who is that?
Either way. You want me to take it, Doug?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Well, everybody should have received an electronic copy of all of our report, as well as our supporting documentation. This report is it's the fiscal year to date. So it's July 1 of 19 through the end of February of 2020. I won't get down too far into the weeds. There has not been any significant changes or expenditures to this point since our last meeting. There is one big thing that I want to bring up that obviously the giant elephant in the room is the COVID-19 crisis that we're all living through right now. And one of the things that we had on our radar prior to that breaking out was the purchase of a new ladder truck, which is a significant expense from the tax. In light of the COVID-19 thing, we have since this has occurred, we have certainly, and Mark Randall can speak to this too. We have certainly tightened our belts significantly. Not that we weren't being judicious in the spending of our money before, but we are instituting a lot more austerity measures just to make sure that we spend our money extremely cautiously and conservatively, and that we put the money that we do have in the right places. Obviously, it's a moving target as far as our tax revenue goes. You've got the reports that we have, and we hope that that those things aren't terribly changed in the long term. One of the changes that we are looking at, and I'll just read a little bit from our report here. Currently, we are in the process of purchasing a new ladder apparatus. Our specifications committee has completed its work, and the process is now working its way through council readings and approval, and we've done all that. The truck has an estimated cost of $1,270,562. Budgeted funds of $800,000 will be used, along with $550,000 appropriated from the unassigned fund. Now, that's where we were. The update to that is, due to the COVID-19 crisis, it has been recommended that the purchase of the aerial apparatus be changed to a short-term lease arrangement to free up public safety sales tax funds as needed. And to get into any of the technical explanation of some of that, I would defer to Chief Short. But in short, not Chief Short, but in short, that would free us up from having a commitment of such a large outlay of cash from that public safety sales tax fund. Chief Short, if you want to add anything to that, I would defer to you at this time.
Yeah, I'll kind of touch on it, and I don't know if Mark wanted to follow up on this, but one of the things that we already know is going to happen is with that sales tax, that's dependent upon local sales tax. And of course, everything is pretty much frozen at this point, or, there's not much coming in. Just to the end of March, we had already seen close to a 3% decline in sales tax revenues. And it's anticipated by the end of the year, we're probably going to be somewhere around 14% below what we had estimated to be into. So that means we obviously have to do some savings into this year, as well as we have to prepare for the next year, because those sales tax will continue to decline as this goes on until everything's up and going. And that still could take a while. Worst case scenario that we're looking at now with the city is probably somewhere into September or October before we get into that full recovery, if we even get to the full recovery. That still is yet to be seen. So the reason we went with the lease was, of course, to make sure that we have to let that money back into our reserve, to make sure that if there are any emergency things that do come up in this next year, until we've gone through what we see our downcline is going to be, we have the ability to have that fluidity in the fiscal aspect of it. We have a lot of our current spending. We're doing only the necessary things at this point that are related to COVID-19 that we purchased through the sales tax funds. I mean, we do have some maintenance and general maintenance and normal contracts, things of that nature, that are still having to be taken care of, but we're kind of putting a hold on major equipment that's still left. Again, just to make sure we're through this before we expend those funds. We can, the good thing about the sales tax funds, they don't disappear at the end of the year. They just go into our reserve. And if we have to then come back next year and make a budget adjustment to get some of the things that we didn't purchase because we wanted to hang on to that money, then we'll bring that back to you next year to potentially make those changes.
Yes, this is Mark Randall, Assistant City Manager. It looks like my title on the screen there is wrong after we went off for a minute. I'm not sure why that happened. But anyway, this is Mark Randall. I just did want to echo what Mark and Chief Short have said there, that the general fund is really looking at a major hit because of the COVID-19 crisis, as well as all the sales tax funds. And so we really appreciate that the efforts that the police and fire department have made to try to help us get through this difficult time. This last quarter here of our fiscal year, our budget year starts July 1st. This last quarter here is really going to be the ones taking the hit. But as the chief said, we're expecting it's going to carry over into the next year too. And the city manager actually has outlined three scenarios depending on how bad it gets or how quickly the economy gets back up and running. And so we're sort of shooting for the middle case there. So we're hoping that the changes that we're making in this budget are going to help carry over to next year. But as you probably saw, we've have of course, a hard hiring freeze, and in all expenditures right now in the current year are essential only. They're all being reviewed. So it is a difficult time. So, but we do have a plan to get through it. And I just wanted to commend the police and fire departments for what they've done to help with the general fund as well as with the sales tax funds. So thank you again, guys.
Thanks, Mark. Just to wrap the fire department up, although we have very little control over how much tax revenue comes in, we could encourage everybody to spend a lot of money, private, personal money, that is. We will, on our side, we will continue to be very judicious about how we spend our money and what things we put money towards. So to that end, I'll wrap up the fire department side. Do you have any questions?
I have a question.
Go ahead, Donna.
Yes, I was just under 5401 on capital outlay on buildings. Could you elaborate, please? Is there anything on the horizon, or as far as, expenditures for this one?
Donna, are you talking about new construction, or are you just talking about what we're spending this year?
Yes, new construction.
At this point, there's nothing in the current budget. Obviously, when this tax passed, there was nothing other than to continue with what we had. However, in the future, we are going to have to look at some ways to fund stations. We have several stations that need to be replaced because of age or their locations, and we have several stations that that weren't designed to have the life that they've had. But with the current tax that we have, there's just no way we could do that at this point. So we're kind of holding on tight with the updates that we did and making fixes where we can at this point. And obviously, this is not a time for us to think about whether or not to go out and hit a tax or anything of that nature for that type of capital improvement. But sometime in the future, when we have some recovery, that's going to have to be discussed.
Thank you.
So I did have a question on the one for capital outlay mobile equipment 5404. I'm assuming that the numbers we're seeing there, there's an encumbrance in there that was for the purchase of the fire equipment, but that's going to change now. Is that correct assumption?
Yeah, that's correct. So rather than doing the full purchase, what that'll drop to is whatever our lease purchase will be, or whatever our upfront costs are for that this year. And then whatever's left over will go back into the fund.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions by anyone? Okay, well, I would just echo Mark's comments relative to the work that's being done. I mean, obviously, this is all unprecedented for all of us. And so, anything that can be done almost has to be done. And so glad to hear what you're doing, at least from my perspective. If there's not any other questions, Heather, you want to call the roll? Or actually, we need a motion to accept it. I'm sorry, getting ahead of myself here. Need a motion to accept the fire department report.
Motion to accept. This is Jared Edwards.
Okay. Motion to accept by Jared Edwards. Did I hear Donna? Did I hear you in there? You want to second it?
Yes.
All right. Second by Donna. Okay. Heather, will you call the roll now?
Donna Pittman,
Yes.
Jared Edwards,
Yes.
Chris Harris,
Yes.
Jared Fears,
Yes.
Josh Mayfield.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. So next up is reporting for the police department.
I'm sorry, you were kind of fading out there. This is Chief Halsey. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to ask Dania to, as she always does, go through the financial part of this. I will tell you, for us, because the lack of funds coming in on the sales tax, the only area that we have to basically draw down on, or not expend, I should say, would be for vehicles. But we're working through that as well. Dania, if you want to go ahead and go through the financials, we can answer any questions at the end of that.
Hello?
I can hear you. You there, Dania?
Here I am, I think.
We can hear you.
We can hear you now.
All right. We'll start on page 2 of our report. The information there at the top, it shows the sales tax collected through the end of February was sitting just under 1.5 million. And just like the fire department, we're seeing a decrease in the revenue. It's projected our portion of the sales tax will see approximately $360,000 in reduced revenue for this year, about 16%. PST expenditures, I'm not going to go line by line, but you can go through each section, communications, facility, and equipment, and you can see what was originally budgeted, what we've spent to date, and what our balance is on each of those lines. Are there any questions on any of those lines?
Yes, I have a question. This is Donna Pittman.
Yes.
Under 4562 regarding Motorola.
Yes. Maintenance?
Yes.
Are you asking about the amount that's over what we budgeted?
Yeah, the one where the expenditures was appropriated 78,225 with the variance.
Okay. Yeah, that is due to 2 years of maintenance being paid out of this year. We've been 1 year behind since that ICC is the new communications center. And because of just timing, when that started, when our budget had already been submitted, we were a year behind in our budget. So we were hoping we could pay just 1 year out of this fiscal year and then pay the rest of it July 1st, but they wanted all of it paid this year. So that's why you're seeing a higher amount than what we've budgeted for. So essentially, because we are over on that line, we have to pull from other lines to cover it. But you'll see some other line items in there that we have not spent, like the net motion, annual maintenance, and radio repairs. And then we're also going to use some of our vehicle funding to cover it.
Thank you.
That makes sense. Anything else? We do have funds encumbered, approximately 510,000. On page 3, there's a list of those items. We have ordered the 10 Ford Explorers. We had already ordered those before COVID-19 hit. Those are due to be arriving in July. We do still have to order equipment for those vehicles, and we're going to try and do that out of this fiscal year. The things that we're going to hold off on, which are mentioned on page 4, we were going to order 3 new motorcycles and a new crime scene van, and we are going to hold off on those until next fiscal year.
And if I can, real quick, number one, if you guys hear cows in the background, I'm on the side of the road at a gas station, and there's cows in the trailer, so I apologize. If you guys remember, the ones that are new to the committee, I just want to make sure that you understand. We started buying Dodge Chargers because there's about a $10,000 price difference. We had to go back to the Ford Explorers, even though they're more money, just so we don't get too far behind on cars. Dodge is coming out with a different spec of a vehicle. We don't know the cost of it either. So that's why we had to kind of divert that savings path and go back down to the Ford Explorers.
Are there any other questions?
Any questions by anybody? Okay, I don't hear any more questions. So can we have a motion to accept the report from the police department?
This is Jared.
Chris Harris.
Motion to accept.
Okay, not sure who I heard first there. Say one more time.
I can
This
second.
is Jared. This is Jared with motion to accept.
Okay, so I think I heard Jared Edwards and Chris. Do you want to second that?
That'll be perfect. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Any further questions or anything else for the police department?
Hey, Jared, this is Chief Halsey again. Can I bring something else up?
You bet.
Mark Randall, Assistant City Manager, is on here. I'm going to let Mark talk about the new use tax. I don't know if the diagram is available because I haven't seen it
Yes.
on this, but Mr. Randall, if you want to go ahead and kick that part of it off.
Sure. Thanks, Chief. Yeah, we do have an image we're going to show you here in a minute. But as you know, this committee, in addition to providing oversight for the public safety sales taxes for police and fire, was recently asked to provide a similar service for the oversight of the police portion of the Proposition P use tax. At the last meeting of the committee, there was a discussion about the need to equip officers who would be hired through Proposition P. And city staff were asked to confirm with the city attorney whether or not Proposition P funds could be used to equip as well as to hire new officers. Accordingly, we did talk to the city attorney, and she was asked to weigh in on this, and she determined that Proposition P funds could indeed be used to both hire and equip new officers, which makes sense because otherwise they wouldn't be able to do the job. In light of the above, we thought the committee might be interested to know the cost of equipping a police officer. So to illustrate these costs, we put together an exhibit, which you see on your screen now, which shows all the equipment required and what the estimated costs are. So you can see we've got the vest there, the taser, gun, and all the other equipment that goes for an officer. And if it's kind of amazing when you look at that number, you see that to fully equip an officer, it's almost $99,000. Now, to be clear, that is not an annual number because these obviously have a lifespan for each of these pieces of equipment. And talking with Chief Halsey, 3 years is probably pretty typical, although some equipment lasts longer and some shorter, but 3 years is probably pretty good. Also, as it's noted there in a little footnote there by the police vehicle, not every new officer that's going to be hired with Proposition P funds will be assigned a vehicle. So that would also be taken into account. But if you were to say a 3-year life cycle And if every new officer was provided a vehicle, that would be $33,000 a year per officer hired. It'd be $18,000 a year if cars were shared. So how does that factor into the Proposition P? How does that affect Proposition P revenues? Well, as you recall, at the time of the election, it was estimated that Proposition P was going to bring in about $1.5 million a year. That was going to be split in this way. $750,000 would be set aside for animal shelter support, and the other $750,000 would go for hiring of new police officers. As that Proposition P increases with more online purchasing going on all the time, that would grow. The animal services part would stay at 750, but the police part would grow, which would allow more officers to be hired over time. So, but we now believe there's probably reason to believe that probably it will be more than $1.5 million. If we take what has actually been collected, we've only had 2 payments come in so far from Proposition P. And if those were to be averaged out for the year, they would come to 1.6 million. But if we also took the last one, which was larger, it would actually come out to more like $2 million a year annual income. So we have reason to hope that there'll be more money coming from that, because at $1.5 million, a fully equipped officer with a vehicle, that would equate to just about 5.6 officers could be hired and fully equipped with a vehicle based on the $1.5 million. If we had the sharing of vehicles, it would be a little more than between 6 and 7 officers. So, but if we go to $2 million, we're talking between, say, 9 and 11 officers fully equipped. So you can see it's really important to see that growth. And we're no doubt we're going to see it, because whereas regular sales taxes are dropping, the internet purchases are not going down, as you can imagine. Now, another thing that would be rosy for us would be if the current use tax is changed by pending legislation at the state. If what's called the Wayfair bill was to pass, it would eliminate this requirement that there's has to be a physical nexus in the state for collection of use tax. And if that was eliminated, then any internet sales that is used in Missouri would be subject to use tax. And so you could very well imagine that that would be greatly increased from, say, 2 million, perhaps it could double even. And then that would be the situation where you'd actually see the full intent of that election, which was to someday be able to hire 30 new officers and equip them to add to the force from the Proposition P. So we're on the way. It's we're beginning to collect it now. We have 2 payments that have come, and it's going to be, we won't be able to hire 30 officers overnight. And as the chief can chime in there, it's very difficult to find that. Even if they had the money in hand, they wouldn't be able to fill that many positions that quick anyway. But it is coming in. We're looking forward to being able to add to the force and to equip officers. And we just thought that we would give you a little bit of an idea as to how that money will be spent. And as we actually get it in and begin to expend it for hiring and equipping officers, of course, that will be appearing in future reports to this committee, just like you had earlier on the sales tax report. So I don't know if there's Chief, is there anything that you wanted to add into that?
No, you did a good job of explaining everything, and you're correct. I mean, obviously, most of you have heard me say many a times, we will not hire people just to fill holes. We want to hire the right people, and we're going to continue down that path. So, right now, people across the nation don't want to do this job for a number of reasons. So it is difficult, but we are still hiring people, good people, and we will get there at some point.
That's helpful. Mark, I had a question for you. I think you had to leave our meeting last time a little early, and I didn't get a chance to ask you last time. Who's going to be responsible for reporting to this committee relative to Proposition P?
Mark, I can answer that if you want.
Go ahead, Rick.
Yeah, Chief Halsey again. So Dania will be working with finance. It is going to be somewhat cumbersome, and I want to tell her publicly I'm sorry because she works her tail off on this stuff, but we'll be reporting that just like we do PST. And Dania, if you want to add anything to that, please do so.
Yeah, I don't really know what it's going to look like yet. I think it'll be a work in progress for a while until we really start seeing expenses going out. We'll have to come up with some kind of format that's going to work for everybody and something that you guys can take a look at each time we report to you.
Yes, the new budget is going to have a new fund in it to account for these funds. And as I said, it'll always have part of it going to animal services, which will be, it's going to be the $750,000, although there is a provision for a cost of living increase in that, but it'll always be $750 for animal shelter operations. And then the rest of it is going to go for the police, for the hiring of the new officers. At the point that you get to the point where it does have the 30 additional equipped officers, then any additional revenue will waterfall to the other sales tax funds. So it will go to general funds, streets, fire, police, stormwater parks after it gets to that point. But again, it'll probably have to be at the level of about $4 million a year for it to be into waterfall. So, but there will be a new fund set up. And as Dania said, we'll have finance will be setting up new reports for that fund, and then they'll just fold the police part of that into this presentation that you had earlier.
Okay, thank you for that further explanation. Anybody else have any questions for the chief or Mark on any of this? Okay, I lost track of where we are. Did we call the roll, Heather, for that?
We did not. We
Okay,
haven't yet. No.
That's what I thought. So,
Donna Pittman,
Yes.
Jared Edwards,
Here.
Chris Harris,
Yes.
Jared Fears,
yes.
Josh Mayfield.
Yes.
Okay. Well, again, thanks to everyone for the information and for working through this process. Mark, we appreciate you being with us today.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Heather, did you have a proposed date for the next meeting?
Sorry, I was looking at my calendar. If we want to keep it on track for quarterly, I know we were supposed to have this one in March and it got postponed due to all things COVID. The last Wednesday in June is June 24th. So I don't know if we want to keep on that same track. So that would put us in September for the third portion of the quarter, and then would put us back on track to present to council at a study session in October.
24th of June works for me. I'm not sure about others.
It works for me, Jared. It works.
Chris Harris.
That should work.
Donna said yes. Josh, what about you?
I don't see why it wouldn't work.
Okay. All right. Well, let's make it June the 24th then. Heather, we'll let you send us a meeting invite, and also to the other participants that are not able to be with us today. And one question I had was, so I think we missed our date for the report to the city council. Has that been rescheduled, or anybody know anything about that?
It was relayed to me that due to COVID, they were going to suspend all of the study sessions currently. So in lieu of that, now that you guys have approved both reports, I will be sending those on to the city manager, to Zach Walker, and to the city clerk, Becky Behrens, and they will make sure that those reports are provided onto the city council.
Okay.
Well
As
said.
well as this recorded and produced live, so the council can go back and watch it if they would like.
Right. Good. Okay. Well, once again, to everyone, I hope everyone is staying as safe as you possibly can. And looks like people are working from a variety of different places. I know I am. And so, certainly wish everybody the best. And if there's nothing else, we'll call this meeting adjourned.
Yeah, I just want to thank Heather and Dania for putting everything together. I know Heather had to do extra work to get this on. So from Chief Short and I, thank you. We talked about it before, so thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Yep.
Thank
Have a
you.
good day, everybody.
All right. Thanks.
All right.
Everybody
Thank
have a
you.
good day. All righty.